Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win, and we're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are taking a look at the Raiment of 1,000 Storms armor for the Monk class. This armor is a Dashing Strike Spirit Generator build. So, the 2-piece bonus says your Spirit Generators have 25% increased attack speed and 400% increased damage. 4-piece Dashing Strike spends 75 Spirit, but refunds a charge when it does. 6-piece bonus says your Spirit Generators increase the weapon damage of Dashing Strike. Subsequently, also, when you cast a Dashing Strike, your Spirit Generators get increased, and when you use your Spirit Generators, your Dashing Strike's damage gets increased. So that's pretty handy. We're also going to be using Captain Crimson's on this set, as well as the Shenlong Fist of Legends, because we'll be able to do more damage with our Spirit Generators for each point of Spirit that we do. On top of that, we are also going to be using the Traveler's Pledge and Compass Rose, which will allow us to do more damage while we're standing still, and while we're moving, we take less damage. Our bracers, or wrist, I should say, are the Spirit Guards, which will help us get a bit more tanky. These are what we are going to be using. Way of the 100 Fist, Assimilation. This is pretty much where all your damage is going to come from. We're also going to be using Crippling Wave, Mangle. This will be for crowd control. We're going to be using Epiphany, Desert Shroud. That way we can get back some of our spirit, and as well as we take less damage. We're also going to be using the Mantra of Salvation, Agility. That way we'll be able to dodge a little quicker, and we also will be able to increase our resistance to elements. We're going to be using Cyclone Strike, Implosion. That way we can pull enemies towards us and just pummel them. For Dashing Strike, we're going to be using Radiance, and these are the passives. Ultricity, Harmony. So there you can see that's what Harmony does, since we're going to be needing to have resistances. We're also going to be using Exalted Soul, because again, this is a Spirit Generator build. Seize the Initiative. Again, this will allow us to do more damage. Intercon Ice Cube. Flying Dragon, which is very important because it allows us to attack faster. Depth Diggers, because we're using primary skills as our point of damage. And obviously, we are going to be using some not Captain Crimson, but since Captain Crimson is being used, we're going to be using a Ring of Royal Grandeur. That way we can get all the bonuses for all these different types of set pieces that we are using. Now, this armor is not the greatest. This is probably one of the weakest armors for the Monk. So we are going to do a Greater Rift 60, 65, and 70. This armor, even when you kind of optimize it, is going to have a very hard time keeping up with high Greater Rifts, because there's only so much you can do to buff Spirit Generator builds. They just don't do a lot of damage because they're usually primary resource attacks that don't do a lot of damage. Okay, so when you get into the Greater Rift, the first things you want to do is cast Dashing Strike whenever you can. After you cast the Dashing Strike, basically use your Way of the 100 Fist, because your Way of the 100 Fist has been buffed thanks to Dashing Strike. So you go Dashing Strike, Way of the 100 Fist. Then you go Dashing Strike again, and then you go Way of the 100 Fist again. You have to keep up that cycle if you want to get the most damage dealt to enemies. Then, preferably, I would recommend casting your Epiphany when possible. Why? Because your Epiphany will give you a little bit more damage, and anytime you use your Way of the 100 Fist, you can actually teleport around the map. Also, it gives you a little bit more damage to your Dashing Strikes, which is going to be kind of helpful. Dashing Strike as an ability is not very good. Now, when it comes to enemies and they're very far away from you, what you can do is cast your Cyclone. When you cast your Cyclone, you will be able to pull enemies in towards you, and then you can just pummel them with your Way of the 100 Fist. But obviously, keep in mind, in order to do the maximum amount of damage, you're going to have to go Dashing Strike, Way of the 100 Fist, Dashing Strike again, and then keep repeating that cycle over and over again as you are progressing through the Greater Rift. This is not the fanciest of armors. It is not the simplest of armors to use. There is a very high margin of error, and you have to keep in mind, when you use a Dashing Strike, you have to connect with something so you can get refunded based on the armor's 4-piece bonus. So keep that in mind as well. Now, this is a armor set where you are going to have to be extremely up close and personal. I'm going to Dashing Strike here, And usually, whenever you see there are a lot of implosions on screen, try your best to like dashing strike away from implosions. So it's kind of good in the sense that dashing strike can be used as a unintentional dodge / teleport, depending on the situation, to get yourself out of a very hairy spot. Obviously, since you are just punching things left and right with this build, you have a higher chance of being killed by enemies that implode and explode. And also, one of the bigger weaknesses with this particular armor is when there's poison on the floor or there's laser beams, because you have to stay stationary to deal the most amount of damage. Now, for legendary gems, you are going to want to use Simplicity Strength, which says anytime you use a primary resource attack, it will increase the amount of damage that is dealt with that. Also, when you level that gem up to 25, you will be able to basically get health back every time you connect with something, which comes in slightly useful for this build. But since we're using primary resources as our attacker, which is basically our spirit generators, Simplicity Strength is definitely the way to go. Subsequently, you want to use a Bane of the Stricken, because since you're going to be punching things multiple times, you can incur the stacks of Bane of the Stricken to deal maximum amounts of damage. After about 3 or 4 hits, you should be able to take things out that are even very tanky on low greater rifts, though, keep in mind. The other gem that you're going to want to use is the Bane of the Trap. Why? Because Bane of the Trap in general will cast slow once you've leveled it up to 25. It just naturally does that for the legendary gem. So it's just very handy to have it, because when you're punching things and you're doing this many things, it's nice to be able to slow them down even for a couple of seconds. So those are the legendary gems that I recommend. You could swap out the Bane of the Trap for something like a Stoic Altercation, something that you want to, you know, kind of buff yourself and give you a little bit more defense or resistance. It's a matter of your playstyle. You could also put in Bane of the Powerful, but the problem with Bane of the Powerful is after a certain percentage of Greater Rift, let's say about after Greater Rift level 70, you're not really going to get the most out of that particular gem, which is why not too many people use it for certain things, so keep that in mind. One good thing about this armor is, depending how low in the Greater Rift you are, you can kind of speed through things and teleport around. Excuse me. Choked a little bit on my own air there. But you can teleport around the screen on lower levels, which will allow you to go through clearer. Now, in terms of where this armor falls, in terms of the tier list, this, in my opinion, for all intents and purposes, is somewhere around D tier to F tier. If you are looking for high play for the Monk class in Diablo 3, there are sadly only really 2 armors that you could really look at. My recommendation is the Season 22 starter armor, which is the Patterns of Justice set, which is a Tempest Rush build of the Monk, but instead of relying mostly on Tempest Rush, it actually relies more so on the Sweeping Wind ability to do its damage. That one I feel performs a lot better. However, if you prefer a different route where you're focusing more so on Tempest Rush as opposed to Sweeping Wind, you can use the Sun Wuku set. Both of those armor sets are S tier for the Monk. They will clear through Greater Rifts like a hot knife through butter, especially if you have them optimized. So definitely check out those particular armors if you're looking for something S tier. They are available in our playlist. Just look for Diablo 3. Next season, I will probably make a Season 23 playlist just to separate the videos into their own type of content sections. So keep in mind that. Speaking of Season 23, Season 23 of Diablo PTB is officially live now on PC. If you play on console like I do, unfortunately, you do not have access to it. But if you are a PC player, you will be able to check out Season 23 and the current changes. And there's some interesting changes. I talked about this on Monday's video, such as the buff to the Firebird set, which is ironic because I recently was talking on the channel about how Firebird needed to be buffed and reworked, which they did. They're adding Disintegrate into the build for its 2-piece bonus. And thanks to Disintegrate and what it does on the set now, it will be able to burn things faster, and you'll be able to do a bit more damage with it. So it looks like on paper that's going to be a very decent, good set compared to what it is now. The other thing is the Rothman set. got slightly changed. Not really changed in terms of what it does, but they added that now Bone Spirit is part of the 4-piece bonus, so now Bone Spirit does damage. And they also gave a new armor piece that buffs Bone Spirit damage when Land of the Dead is cast, so that's pretty good. I'm going to be talking more about these things in details in a future video. I'm waiting to see the finalized patch notes for right before Season 23 goes live to give my extensive thoughts on that. I don't want to give them just yet because when it comes to the PTB, things do change as weeks progress. So some things that they feel are working and some things they feel aren't working, they can change and modify before the official Season 23 is released. Another thing about Season 23 for people is that the Gears of Dreadland set has been nerfed a bit. So now when you use Strafe, Hungering Arrow only will cast Hungering Arrow twice as opposed to 4 times. So that decreases the amount of power and damage that it does substantially, so that it kind of is not as powerful and end-all to be all as it was currently on the leaderboards. Another thing that is also nerfed in Season 23 of Diablo is the Mundunugu set. Not necessarily the set itself, but the go-to offhand weapon that it uses, which is Gazing Demise. Gazing Demise has been modified to have a stack cap, and they've also decreased the amount of damage that Spirit Barrage can do with Gazing Demise. So Mundunugu is not going to be as powerful and as end-all as be-all as it is for the Witch Doctor. They felt that the Mundunugu set was performing way too well with what it has available, so they felt that they needed to decrease the amount of damage that it was able to push out and what it's able to perform. So basically what they did was the 2 overperforming armors from Season 22 got significant changes. And Gears of Dreadland, as I mentioned before, was way too powerful since its release. Mundunugu is very powerful in its own right too, so I can kind of understand the nerf to that, although the Witch Doctor class is a class that not many people play, only like the serious and most veterans of Diablo 3 players. Okay. Also, something that we can talk about here is that Diablo 2 Resurrected has been announced. It's been announced on all platforms, including the Nintendo Switch. I mentioned this before on the channel, but when Diablo 2 does officially drop sometime in 2021, there's not too much time left in 2021, so I'm assuming it's probably going to be a summer or November release, similar to how Diablo 3 was on the Nintendo Switch. I will definitely be playing it. I will be playing on the channel. I will be covering it. I will be doing armor sets and class things and looking at all the changes and whatnot. That's going to definitely be something we do on the channel. I don't know if that's going to be the only thing I do. I believe I'm going to continue to do Diablo 3 videos as long as Blizzard continues to support Diablo 3 as a game. So probably I'm going to mix it up, and usually we do 2 Diablo 3 videos a week on the channel. Probably what I'm going to do is I'll mix it up. I'll do like a Diablo 2 and a Diablo 3. And then if I see that Diablo 3 videos are doing a bit better, or that's where mostly everybody's interest is, we will stick with one or the other. But we're going to play it by ear, guys, when we have still quite a while away. There's probably going to be at least 2 more seasons of Diablo 3 that we'll play through before we even see Diablo 2 actually get released still. So that was a pretty fast Greater Rift. That was actually a Greater Rift 65. I believe we cleared that one actually faster than we did the first Greater Rift. So I just am augmenting random gems. I'm going to use them to level up armor. It's not going to be this armor set. This is not something I really would play with. Okay, so that was a 4-minute clear time. That's actually not bad for a pretty bad armor, guys. Alright, so this is a Greater Rift 70. I am probably going to get killed a bunch with this, because I will be honest with you. As you go higher up in the Greater Rifts with the Raiment of 1,000 Storms, you are going to take a lot of damage and not be able to dish out as much damage. The biggest Achilles heel with this armor is the fact that since you have to be up close and personal, and there's going to be situations where your Epiphany is like run out and you will take damage. You can't take damage very well with the Monk class, unfortunately. It's not a very tanky class. It's not like playing the Barbarian or like playing the Crusader. The Monk is kind of weak and a bit fragile. I wouldn't say as fragile as the Necromancer, but pretty fragile. So when you get higher up in Greater Rifts, I'm going to stress this a lot for you guys. You have to rely on your Cyclone Strike after you've done Dashing Strike and connected with Spirit Generators a lot. And you're going to have to rely on Epiphany. So in these type of situations, okay, point, look, I took a bad death there. You need to really micromanage when and how you use your Epiphanies, because Epiphany is going to be able to allow you to take less damage, but everything pretty much at high Greater Rifts can kill you. And the fact that this is a set where you have to be up close and personal, do most of your damage, does not benefit. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking. Well, why is Crippling Wave on the set if you don't use it too much? Crippling Wave pretty much attacks in a circular radius. So it's good if I were in a very high Greater Rift, case in point here, but I can't actually use it because the enemies are not surrounding me. But what you want to do with it is you want to wait for your enemies to surround you and then cast it, because it will attack in a circular radius, which means you attack things that are just kind of like trying to swarm you in a circular motion. So that's why you use it. It's also good to use it like after you use a Cyclone Strike. It's really a matter of the Greater Rifts and just kind of trying to feel it out. Again, as you see in Greater Rift 70, the big problem with this armor set is that the ice floor, any mob that does damage on the ground or casts things on the ground, such as the poison or the ice, or if you're too greedy and things explode and you're not dodging or rolling out of the way, you're going to take a lot of damage, and it's going to be pretty much detrimental to you. You're going to take a lot of deaths. Which is why, I mean, in tier list, this is pretty much D tier list armor. I think some people might even argue that this is F tier. I don't really say it's F tier because you can clear Greater Rift 70s with it, even though it starts to feel more like you're trying to push things, which is probably the best you can do with this armor. You know, like I said before, this is kind of one of those armors that's going to be for funsies. I honestly would say that the Ina set, which was the set that we last covered for the Monk, which is available in the playlist, is actually slightly better when you optimize for this armor, or when you optimize it. So definitely check that out. Now, in terms of optimization for this armor, what can you do? On your helm, you want crit hit chance 6.0%. I definitely recommend that. On your gloves, I recommend attack speed 6, 7, or 8. If whatever you can get on it, definitely you want that for this particular build. You also want to get on your gloves crit hit damage 50%, crit hit chance 6.0%. Now, on the rest of your items or armor pieces, I would recommend wherever you can get 15% on Way of the 100 Fist, definitely do it. Remember, all your damage on this armor is coming from your Spirit Generator, which is primarily Way of the 100 Fist. Anywhere where you can buff Dashing Strike, I kind of recommend doing it just so it can do a little bit more damage. It's not going to be significant, but something is really better than not having any type of buff to it. Also, keep in mind, when you're optimizing this armor, since you don't have to rely too much on cooldown, you could kind of ignore it for resource cost generation instead. However, if you want to keep your Epiphany up the most, because keep in mind this armor does not have a Goaka Swiftness on it, although you could kind of modify what I'm using to fit a Goaka Swiftness if you feel the need to, like getting rid of the Bane of the Trap. What I would recommend then is trying to put some cooldown on it if you feel like you need Epiphany to be up a lot more than you have it active. So you would probably try to do cooldown on like the pants if you're not using the Captain Crimson on the pants and the boot. Also keep in mind, since we are using Captain Crimson, anywhere you could put cooldown is going to increase the amount of damage you do that way as well. So keep that definitely in mind as options. It's a matter of what you feel is going to work best for you. You know, and it's also a matter of RNG. It's very RNG dependent. You're not going to necessarily get every type of desirable stat on an armor piece. It takes quite a long time for it on Diablo, and even when you think you have the best armor piece possible for it, it's not. Okay, so we didn't take that many deaths for this, so it's not that bad of armor. I'm going to Dashing Strike around as much just so I could do a significant amount of damage. I'm also using Dashing Strike as a way to evade and dodge this guy, because if he one-shots me with one of the swing, it's very possible that's going to happen. So we took him down, thanks to Bane of the Stricken, as well as combining Dashing Strike. So remember, this arming, you have to go Dashing Strike, Spirit Generator, which is your Way of the 100 Fist, Dashing Strike, and then keep repeating that. So it's dashing strike with 100 fists. Dashing strike with 100 fists. Whenever you can have your epiphany up, keep it up. Mantra of Salvation is kind of helpful when you're playing with groups. It's not going to be so helpful necessarily for everything else. Also, keep in mind, if mobs are too far away from you, you can pull them in with Cyclone Strike, which is why Cyclone Strike's in the set. That's actually not bad. 5 minute and 44-second clear time on a non-optimized armor. That's actually kind of like D to F tier. That's actually pretty decent in performance. I mean, however, I wouldn't really recommend trying to augment this and getting all ancient legendary augmentations onto the armor pieces, because at the end of the day, with this armor set, you are not going to be able to perform at very high greater lifts at high tier levels, which is why I say just go Patterns of Justice. That's probably one of the armors you want to invest all your resources, time, and energy into. Unless you're really bored with that and you just want to do things for funsies. That's why I make these guides, so I can kind of steer you guys into the right direction as to what armors will work best, which armors are kind of just for fun, and which armors can kind of sub-perform. It really depends on the type of player you are. So if you're looking to be super competitive, I would say Patterns of Justice and Sunwuku set. It's available in the playlist. If you're looking for more casual, this is an option. Uliana will probably be a better option as opposed to this one. And then subsequently, you could, if you're playing in groups and want to help your groups out a lot, you could use the Ina set. So that's pretty much going to do it for this Diablo 3 video. I'm going to save that weapon because that summons the cow level for those of you who don't know. So thanks for watching. Make sure you give this video a like and subscribe. And I will see you Monday for the next Diablo 3 video. And let me know in the comments what you think of upcoming Season 23 changes.